Well, hey now, everybody. It's the Rob from Kiss 106 and 103GBFRocks.com, along with my tag team partner in podcasting, Jerry to Harry Valeri. Good morning, Jer.
Good morning, number 8. This is a somber show. This is a death show.
Yeah, so, we always do your live recaps of the show. The recaps of the live shows is kind of what we've been known for, whether it be a pay-per-view, a Raw, a SmackDown. But whenever something massive happens in the news, I want to definitely chat with everybody about it. And boy, yesterday was really one of those days. And they say it comes in threes, and it seemed like yesterday all three happened at once.
Well, and I didn't know about the one, so I messaged you, and I was like, somebody better keep a close eye on Scott Hall. Like somebody better take a look at Jake Roberts and keep an eye on these guys that I feel are on death watch. But what's his name? Brickhouse Brown? I'm sorry, I don't know him.
I got to be honest with you, Jer. I don't either. And I don't want to play ignorant, but I feel like when it comes to wrestling, I'm pretty well versed. I mean, I can't recall ever seeing one of his matches. So I'm not going to, pretend that I'm deeply affected by that one, but the other two, I really am.
I really am too. And for different reasons, I don't know where you want to start, but with Brian Christopher, the fact that he's 6 years older than me and not even like almost 5 years older than me, the way that he went out, suicide, hanging, the problems he's had, the fact that I watched him in the Attitude Era, everybody knows Too Cool, Grandmaster Sexy. It's absolutely devastating when anybody does that with their life. And that's a hard pill to swallow at 46. The Nikolai Volkoff one, for me, man, I loved booing him as a kid. I mean, like, I remember, like, he's one of the first heels I remember. I had the action figure, him and Sheiky Baby, the tag champs. And Freddie Blassie, like, you hated those guys with a passion, fighting Bruno Sammartino at Madison Square Garden, which was a little before my time, but mostly, feuding with Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter and Nikolai Volkoff. And then you hear later in life that Nikolai Volkoff, this guy that I hated, the guy that was USSR and he had the big fuzzy hat, and I hear he's like the nicest guy in the world.
That's kind of the word on Nikolai. So here is the thing. It's kind of been a joke on this show and a reality in the world of wrestling that when you're in like I'll say like before the 90s, you were a heel. If you're a foreigner, you had to be a heel. That was all there was to it.
Because racism.
Yeah. I mean, for lack of a better term, yeah. The all-American boys, so to speak, were the champions and the baby faces, and the guys from Tehran, Iran, and the USSR and Japan and everything. Those are the guys that were presumed to be heels.
Yeah, how Tito Santana and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat skated through as baby faces is beyond me. Like, I don't know how they allowed it.
Well, I can't think of any two people that benefited from that mentality more so than Nikolai Volkoff and Sheiky Baby.
Oh yeah, Sheiky Baby, make you humble.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you could just take one look at them, know they weren't from America, and you just wanted to throw things at them and spit on them. And I'll admit, these guys ran before my time. I started watching wrestling around 1994, but I did have one very vivid yet confusing memory live of Nikolai Volkoff. And
what was it?
If my friend John is watching, he's already laughing at this, because I bet you most people have probably forgotten this thing even existed. But I started watching wrestling in 1994, which means the first WrestleMania I ever got to watch live, not necessarily in the arena, but on pay-per-view, was WrestleMania 11, 1995.
Past his prime.
Past his prime, for sure. Now, do you remember he was involved at WrestleMania 11?
You'll have to remind me exactly how.
Okay.
I mean, it all blends together at this point for me.
I was hoping you would say that, because I bet you a lot of people don't exactly remember Nikolai's involvement at WrestleMania 11. And
was it like a battle royal or something?
No, it wasn't. So leading up to WrestleMania 11, do you remember what the big match was? What the main event of WrestleMania 11 was?
Give it to me. I'm so terrible with cards and remembering the details.
Bam Bam Bigelow and Lawrence Taylor were the main.
Oh God, that was that one. Okay,
were the main event of WrestleMania 11, and I have been watching Raw pretty religiously since SummerSlam 94. So it's less than a year. And I mean, I'm sure I missed some here and there that year, but for the most part, every Monday night, I was sitting in front of my TV watching USA. And everybody on the card at WrestleMania, if you've been watching for a year. And then as part of the $1 Million Team, so Bam Bam is part of Ted DiBiase's $1 Million Team.
Yep.
And he's got all sorts of guys out there with him. Like, I don't know, Tatanka was there, King Kong Bundy was there, Kama was part of the team. Because you got to remember, what's his face? Lawrence Taylor had, Kevin Green and Mongo McMichael and all sorts of different football players out there. So it was almost like an unannounced lumberjack match in a way. So one of the guys, you got the $1 Million Man, comes out looking literally like $1 million, bedazzled with a suit that has dollar signs all over it. Yeah. And then there's this old, frumpy, fat grandpa looking guy who waddles out with a big penny sign, like a cent mark, on his back, just like the $1 Million Man's. And they introduce him as Nikolai Volkoff. And I was so confused because whenever he did that short-lived return to be a part of the $1 Million Team, I must have missed it. I had the first I had ever seen of Nikolai Volkoff was in the main event of WrestleMania 11. I was so confused.
And that was not a good version of him. That wasn't the Nikolai Volkoff you want to see. That's, you want to see the Nikolai Volkoff from like the Saturday morning cartoon, when he was one of the main bad guys. And you got to remember, dude, 84, 85, we're in the middle of the Cold War. So while I'm 8 years old in my living room and I'm booing these guys and I'm rooting for the Ultimate Warrior, I'm rooting for Hulk Hogan to take on Sheiky Baby and Sergeant Slaughter to take on Nikolai Volkoff, my grandmother's in the room like, he's no good. Look at him. He's no good. That guy's no good. Like, there's no kayfabe when your grandmother's like, that's a communist on your television. And I mean, it was real for people. And it was back in the day where like nobody was getting smartened up. You were either smartened up or you weren't, but it wasn't across the board. So Nikolai Volkoff's coming out in his USSR shirt. People are waiting in bread lines, and we don't know if they're going to hit the nuke button or not. Gorbachev is standing there with the big ink blot on his forehead, and Nikolai Volkoff is singing the Russian national anthem in Madison Square Garden, and people are throwing cups full of soda. Like, that man's amazing. And then you see him with DiBiase and his shooters on WrestleMania 11.
Well, and it's like, I have no idea what the actual words are for the Russian national anthem, but I swear I know the damn thing. It's like, like I know what it is because of Volkoff.
Like, people thought the NWO got some crazy heat. Volkoff was getting heat in the 80s and the 70s.
Yeah, so all the articles I read, which, the few that I looked at, they all referenced him as one of the all-time greatest heels. And it's so funny because if you were to ask me to sit and rank like my all-time favorite heels, like, you got like Triple H and Ric Flair and
DiBiase.
Yeah, and like all these times, I guess I wouldn't have thought to have put Nikolai on that list, but it's so true. Whether it was, I guess I wouldn't consider him great because it was really just his heritage that got him his heat.
Sure.
But my gosh, I mean, when you look back at the rock and wrestling era and a little even prior, he was undeniably, consistently one of the biggest heels on the show.
Yeah, he was a big Russian bear. He played the part perfectly. And then I guess backstage, everybody absolutely loved him because he was. I've never heard a crossword. Nobody's ever shoots on Nikolai Volkoff. Nobody.
You know what? That Nikolai, he took a dump in my bag one time. Him and Iron Sheik just both left the two number 2s right there in my bag.
Nikolai Volkoff kept banging my girlfriend while DX guarded the door. It was the worst.
You never heard those things about Nikolai. So yeah, just wanted to, quickly mention that we were very sad to hear of the passing of Nikolai. And
I mean, WWE and all the WWE superstars, they put it over big time yesterday on Twitter. I mean, I could spend an hour reading Twitter comments. The one from Triple H I liked. Nikolai entertained while inciting anger in fans all across the WWE universe. But backstage, he was a gentle and thoughtful family man. Our thoughts are with his family at this difficult time. Different tone with the Brian Christopher, because everyone's still saying wonderful, kind things. But it's like when a 70-year-old dies, it's different than a 46 that took his own life. It's different.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. So, I kind of meant to send something to you. I guess it was a few months ago now, but there was something that Dave Meltzer reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter from an event that happened in Evansville involving Brian Christopher. And I never really saw this reported anywhere unless I missed it. If you have a second, I'll read it to you.
Yeah, find it. And then I want to ask you a question because, the reports say he hanged himself in jail, I guess, but I didn't even know he was in jail. Like I
know a little bit about that too. So here's what I've got. This is coming from Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. This was, I want to say, March, maybe February. There was a violent altercation that has been kept quiet since mid-February. There was a fight involving pro wrestlers Brian Lawler, 46, better known as Brian Christopher, and Grandmaster Sexay, the son of Jerry Lawler, and Jonathan Ryan Clark, 39, Chase Stevens, who was best known as part of the tag team The Naturals in the early days of TNA. Lawler was badly beaten up, suffered a fractured skull, a broken nose, broken orbital bone, and had teeth knocked out and was rushed to the hospital when police arrived. The report indicated that Lawler was intoxicated when police arrived and found him in the hotel lobby. There are stories that it could have been even worse had people working at the hotel not heard the commotion and stepped in. According to the police report on the case, the fight took place on February 18th after 4 o'clock in the morning at the Fairfield Inn in Evansville, Indiana, in room 318.
Wow. Is that close to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's in Evansville.
Yeah.
Clark, who was a Golden Gloves boxing champion when he was younger, was arrested and charged with battery causing serious injury. Again, this is all alleged by Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
Sure.
While there were reports circulating in wrestling that a weapon may have been used, the police report said the damage was done by fists. At one point, a GoFundMe was put up for Lawler's injuries right after it took place, but claiming he was in an accident at home. It was since taken down, perhaps due to it coming out that the story wasn't true. So that was seemingly just part of a sad downfall for a guy who had definitely made an impact here amongst the community in Evansville.
Well, and Eric Cornish wrote, I thought, a lovely thing about him today he shared.
Yeah, I'll read Eric's words here in just a second. I have those pulled up too. But that was one thing, because I've got a whole bunch of Evansville people and wrestlers and stuff on my news feed.
Well, Brian Christopher, just quickly, he got super over, and he kind of got over without people making a fuss about him being Jerry Lawler's son.
Yes and no. I think that
he didn't use the Lawler name in the WWE, and they could have.
Pretty true. That's pretty much true. I mean, it was always kind of the wink, wink, nudge, nudge that he was Jerry's kid, but I think that it was his legit merits that got him to where he got to.
And they were a comedy team, but everybody knew Too Cool. I mean, they were part of the Attitude Era, big time.
Oh, Too Cool was a definitive part of the Attitude Era. I mean, like that. Their
music.
Are
they in the Hall of Fame? I know Rikishi is, but are they all in the?
They're not. Rikishi, actually, my understanding was he blocked them from his speech. I don't know what the story is, that he does not like them. Apparently, he did not mention either of them in his speech, from what I understand, and said that they were not supposed to be at the ceremony if you're going to be inducting Rikishi.
That's a shame, because they were a big part of his career too, whether he denies it now or not.
Absolutely, they were, without a doubt. And yeah, I mean, their music, whether they had two different theme songs, both of which I can hear immediately in my head.
Yeah,
I can see their Titantron and their outfits and their weird dance, and you know, it's like, yeah, they were using the worm.
The ski goggle things way before Becky Lynch.
Way before Becky Lynch. Yeah. And I mean, while they didn't have any main event angles really, although he was in a handful of main events on Raw, it was just synonymous with the Attitude Era, that tag team.
Absolutely.
I have a mug that Steve gave me of Too Cool at my desk here at work. I've got Brian Christopher looking at me every day.
It's a shame that his demons won out. That's, you know, there's nothing else I can say about it.
So yeah, before I read Eric's statement, it was very clear that Brian made a big impact on the wrestling community here in Evansville. For starters, I got a chance to meet Brian. I believe actually Cornish was one of the guys who got them to do interviews with our stations, but there was some sort of Legends of Wrestling show that involved Bill Dundee, Jamie Dundee from PG-13. There was one of the Bushwhackers and Brian Christopher, and they all stopped by my night show at the time on KISS. And it was just crazy because these were all guys I watched wrestle growing up, you know, and they were there just kind of hanging out. And I remember even Jamie, he was so nice. We exchanged phone numbers. I remember he invited me to watch the Super Bowl over at his house. And he said a few things that convinced me he was a legit listener of mine. Like, he actually liked my night show.
I don't see why he wouldn't, but that's awesome.
Well, thanks. And then I remember I met, it was a stripper at a strip club, and she had talked, she was like, you know, Jamie Dundee, don't you? And I said, yeah, how'd you know? And that dancer told me he was in here saying that you guys were buddies a few weeks ago.
Look at that. He's name dropping you.
And I was like, that's the coolest story you've ever told me. Thank you. Yes, we are buddies.
Yes.
So I haven't talked to him in years, but JC the Ice Baby, I do consider a friend of mine. So you have NFL players. I have guys from PG-13.
I feel like it all works out. It all comes out in the wash. So absolutely perfect. My question, I want you to get to the Cornish thing, but I do the Cornish thing, and then I have a question about tonight.
Save your question, but because I'm still not done, because he was obviously from, you know, this area, Memphis, and Evansville was always on his loop. And I mean, he probably wrestled, and it's safe to say, I would think hundreds of times in Evansville, and everyone who stepped between the ropes in Evansville wrestling has pictures with the guy, has nice things to say about the guy. And even though he did seem like he was, you know, I hate to use the cliche, but he had his demons.
Yeah, but he had them, man.
It seems like a very likable guy. And I mean, in my short experience with the guy, he seemed that way to me, but no one was really like, man, you know, he took a dump in my bag or whatever. So, and then to wrap it up, obviously,
I know what our show is going to sound like when X-Pac dies.
Well, you know what's funny was, I guess, except for Sable, not a lot of people really had a lot of bad things to say about X-Pac, but we can save that for when he eventually goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, Eric, obviously a guy from the wrestling scene here in Evansville. He said, hey guys, won't be able to join you this morning, but wanted to pass along my thoughts on Brian, especially. He said, I met him through Jamie Dundee during the run of Legends show in Evansville. I got to know him pretty well and even did an angle where I turned heel and joined PG-13 to face Brian. I even hired him for a show I promoted. Before we knew each other, I was a fan. He was part of a new generation of guys in Memphis following in his dad's footsteps in the early 90s. Honestly, I didn't know he was a Lawler until years later when JR used to press the king about it in WWE. He has always had demons, but he was trying to fight them. I hate that it ended like this. I know Jamie and his family are grieving pretty bad because of how close they were. They literally have known each other since birth. I wish all the best to the Lawler and Dundee families and all those who were close to Grandmaster Sexay. He will be missed. And
now, was he estranged from his dad, or what's the relationship with Brian and Jerry?
So my understanding is Jerry was there when they decided to take Brian off of life support yesterday. But I do think tumultuous would be the best way to sum that up.
Horrible.
I think that they were hot and cold, and a lot of the times pretty cold. I don't think they were totally estranged. I think that when Brian started finding success in wrestling, they had some things to bond over. And I think that probably during that Attitude Era time, they probably have a good bit of solid memories together. But my understanding is neither one of you or neither one of them would say that Jerry was Father of the Year any year.
So, yeah. So you have two wrestling deaths. Both superstars made different impact at different times in the WWE. Both super significant, although I would say that Nikolai is probably more than Grandmaster Sexy in the eyes of the WWE if you look at the full body of work. Died in totally different ways, had totally different kinds of issues, but it happened at the same time. So tonight on Monday Night Raw, how do they play it? Because you can't recognize one and not the other. Can you do a big package for one and not the other? If you have the wrestlers come out and you ring the bell, do you do it for both?
They're not going to get bell rings.
You don't think Nikolai would get the bell ring?
Absolutely not. No, I think that you got to keep in mind the bell ringing. I think people forget this is traditionally for active stars.
Okay.
Pass.
Okay.
I believe Bruno got one, but that was because he was Bruno.
Because he was Bruno. And
I don't think you'll find many other examples outside of active stars who get the full 10 bell salute. That's the first thing. Okay. And if you want me to be totally honest, I think this is how they handle it. At the start of the show, one graphic, probably Nikolai. At the start, later in the show, maybe the halfway point, maybe the start of the second hour or the third hour. I think two different graphics at two different times.
Do you think they're going to throw a tearjerker for Nikolai in there like they did for Piper? I mean, he's not.
You mean a package?
Yeah, like a package, a real tearjerking package.
That's possible. I don't think Brian will get one because I'm not positive.
I don't think Brian will get one either. But I think it's because of how he died. I do.
I don't know. That's tough.
I'm not saying he doesn't deserve one. That's why I'm very curious how they play it tonight. I hope they honor them both, though.
I can't imagine they wouldn't honor both of them. I think, yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question, Jerry. I didn't really get a chance to think about that one.
Ever since Chris Benoit, they've been in a really tricky situation, you know? And I mean, I'm not saying what Brian Christopher did is the same thing. It is not, but it's still like, they don't want to be a lightning rod for criticism. So they've got to be very careful. But at the same time, you know, Jerry Lawler is a part of the WWE in one way or another. They're going to respect his son. They're going to honor him, but I just don't know what they're going to do.
I didn't even really factor that part into it. I think that even notwithstanding Jerry still being there and Jerry's visibility with the company, they would have handled it with a graphic.
Yeah.
So were you clued in as to his recent arrest?
I didn't even know he was in jail. They said he died in jail and I didn't even know.
I didn't know he was still in jail. I guess earlier in July, I want to say it was the 12th. I might be wrong about that. He was arrested for a DUI. My understanding of the story was police saw him swerving and driving a bit erratically, and he was able to, for a period of time, successfully evade police. I don't know if it was after the fact or right after, but they got him at his house. And in his house, he reeked of alcohol and he had an open beer in his car. And they arrested him for DUI. Now, most of the people that I know that have gotten DUIs were kind of in and out. You take them to the slammer and then they're not usually there this long.
Yeah.
So I don't know what all went down following the DUI arrest, or maybe he's had.
It's all speculation at that point, but I mean, one would infer that it probably there were complications.
Yeah, and again, this is all. I mean, I guess for lack of a better term, rumor and innuendo too. I only know what I read on I'm no more clued in than everyone else who reads stuff on the internet either. So then I guess. And it's a shame that he was able to do this because you're not supposed to be able to do this, but he found a way to hang himself allegedly in prison. And they were able to unhang him or get him down or however you want to call it before he died, but he was right there. and he had been on life support. He went to a hospital, and
you shut your brain off that long, and it's over.
Sure. And I guess Jerry was there, probably with a few other people. I don't know what the decision was made to take him off of life support, and yesterday he passed. And it's a shame because you're not supposed to be able to do that. Like, you're supposed to be not able to hang yourself in prison.
Right.
Because it all gets better. And I know it sounds like a cliche anymore. And I know that like anti-suicide is a lot of people's platform right now, but this is like a great example of it was going to get better. It was. You had a lot. You had a
permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah. You had some stuff going on, and I hate that was what he felt like he needed to do to get out of it. But if you just would have hung in there, he could have straightened things out. And that sucks. 46 years old, man. Yeah. Like you said, less than 6 years older than you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just crazy to think about. And, yeah, I'm a guy, I probably have more memories of Brian Christopher and Too Sexy. And I remember there was one time one of my friends, Drew, was in, it was called Mr. East. It was a popularity / talent show at our high school where you had to be voted in as one of the most popular guys, and then you would do a talent or whatever. And so my friend Drew was voted in, and he wanted me and my friend, the other Jerry, to join him. And part of our thing was we did the Too Cool dance, and he was like the Rikishi character who went out and did stuff in the student body in the audience, and he put his butt on the principal and stuff. It was funnier at the time.
But did you do the worm?
I think Jerry did. I can't worm, but but it was funny because we came up with this last minute, and we already knew the dance because we had seen it so many times. We had never done it. We just knew it by heart. And it's
when I think they're in that group of Attitude Era guys that were never like the big main eventers, but they were so part of Attitude Era. And those are the guys like The Godfather and Val Venus, Too Cool.
Sure.
And like that's the group that I have them in, right?
Yeah, and it's like, to be honest with you, I think if you look at tag teams synonymous with the Attitude Era, they could be number one, because the Hardys, they outlived the Attitude Era. And Edge and Christian.
So did Edge and Christian.
Yeah, and the Dudleys. Like, I just feel like the time of their popularity, I can't think of it. I mean, like, it's them and like the super heavyweights, the Holly Cousins. Like, they were the Attitude Era when it came to tag team.
Headbangers.
Right, yeah. So I just feel like Too Cool, such a great example of a tag team that embodied attitude. They got over on their personalities and their attitudes. And that's what it was all about, man. Yeah,
absolutely. And so rest in peace, Brian Christopher, and rest in peace, Nikolai Volkoff.
Yeah, yeah. And I see a lot of people, like, for example, David saying, what about Brickhouse Brown? He passed away as well. We addressed him, dude. I know that he passed away. I can't tell you a single match I ever saw the guy in. I don't mean to disrespect him.
No, I'm not. It would be disrespectful, I think, for us to act like we knew who the heck he was.
Don't you hate when people glom on stuff and they start telling you stories that, you know, like, oh man, and Bunkhouse Brown meant so much to me, and that just be for attention. I really didn't. I'm really sorry to his family and for the loss. And he seemed like, you know, he was a very talented guy. If you can tell me that you've seen 3 matches of his, I would call you a liar.
Is it Bunkhouse Brown? See, I'm getting it wrong. I wasn't calling him Brickhouse.
I'm sorry,
Brown.
It is Brickhouse. Because I'm thinking of Bunkhouse Buck. And
that's where we are with him. And again, the more we talk about him, the more disrespectful I feel like we sound. Because I just don't.
You're probably right.
Know the guy. I don't know the guy, but you know, he had a good career. I'm looking at Wikipedia right now. I'm not going to go through the list, but you know, we're not disrespecting him. We're just talking about the ones we know the most, and that's Nikolai and Brian Christopher.
Let me ask you,
rest in peace, Brickhouse Brown.
When you have his information there, do you see anything for WWF or WWE TV?
Let's see. I see a lot of Championship Wrestling Association, AWA, World Class Championship Wrestling, Continental Wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, this is a respectable resume from the territorial days.
Yeah, okay, so let's see here. Back in Memphis in '95, he won a USWA World Tag Team Championship.
So people who grew up around here.
He competed in the WWF in '95 as an enhancement talent. He worked 2 TV tapings. One was against Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and one was against Henry O. Godwin. And